Okay, image number 4. So here we have gone down into the trenches. So when the Germans invaded Belgium, Belgium had this system of forts, basically designed to say, hey, we can give you a bloody nose if you invade our country. And they did a whole lot more than that. The Belgians slaughtered the Germans. Slaughtered them. They were killing so many that Belgian machine gunners were wondering what to do about the piles of bodies that were lined up on the fields, because the Germans were beginning to take cover behind them. So it's 1914. There's all these tactics of the old world where we're just going to march into fire because how likely is it that we're going to get hit? Well, now it's really likely that you're going to get hit. The Germans respond with some of the most Titanic-sized guns ever. They're these giant gamma mortars that basically destroy Belgian forts in single shots. And they really show the power of mechanization. But we're all going to fail to learn the lessons here that the defense has the advantage. So we're going to continue to run at one another. So when France and Germany finally come into contact with each other, which the French don't believe is going to happen, they have this longish period where everyone's shifting and moving, and the Germans are overrunning the French. The plan is working. The idea is like a swinging gate. They have a little like distraction force going on in the south of France on the southern German-French border, where they're going in and they're retreating. They're going in and retreating just to kind of draw France's attention down there. Meanwhile, this giant army is marching its way through Belgium, because the fog of war is a real thing at this point. Like, you don't have drones, you don't have mass communication systems, you can't see what your enemy is doing. The idea is that France will get distracted, shift its attention to the south to prevent the Germans from retaking Alsace and Lorraine, which they will very quickly. This was a major cause of the war. And then while they're busy doing that, this giant army is going to smash in, take Paris, and then flank the other, the main French force. And that almost happens. It comes extremely close to happening. And had that happened, Germany would have won the war almost instantaneously, because meanwhile, on the other side of the front, those troops that the Germans didn't bring over and left to guard Russia, well, they're going to wish that they had them, because those guys mop up the Russians in about a day. They take an unbelievably short amount of time to defeat an unbelievably incompetent set of Russian generals, and the eastern threat is nearly neutralized at this point in the war. It'll ramp back up very quickly, but there's this gap. Anyway, that's another conversation. So the problem becomes some mistakes that are made on the German side. They fail to capitalize on their advantages on the Western Front. And so Britain, meanwhile, comes in because they've been inspired to defend Little Belgium. There's been this publicization of something called the Rape of Belgium, basically where the Germans mistreated Belgian hostages and civilians. And so Britain comes in, they take up some space, they defeat, they and the French, they don't defeat the Germans, but they hold the Germans back long enough for like the intense rocket fuel burst to run out. So now we have two sides, both armed with machine guns and artillery, that are killing more and more people by the day. They do what's only natural, and they begin to go to ground. What's going to happen here, though, is there's going to be a front that doesn't move for the majority of the war from well into France and Belgium, going all the way down to Austria, basically to Austria and Italy. It'll be possible at one point to almost walk across the entire European continent without once putting your head above the ground, because you can stay in a trench the whole time. What this means is that men are dying where they fight, and their comrades are unable to move their bodies, because if they take them out of the trench, they're going to be killed almost instantaneously. What ends up happening is all sides are throwing more and more men into the trenches, because they believe that if we just have more forces than the other side, we can overwhelm them. So the battles get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But men just survive heavy shelling artillery sometimes, and there's enough defense that no side can ever get enough of a foothold before they're counterattacked and overrun again. And so what begins to happen is you see all of that, the natural and the good, and the culture and all of that begins to be thrown into the maw of the war, and both sides begin to grind each other down into nubs. And so the trenches become a truly hellish existence. The trenches themselves are terrible. They are full of water and lice and rats, and dead bodies from years past at some points. And so to represent this photographically, I didn't want to be too graphic about it, but I did want to hint at this, at the use of technologies that really could have helped humanity, hinting at this being part of the driving fact, or the driving force of destruction. And I wanted to kind of give this shadowy, haunting, blurry feel to it, because this is something that we simply can't understand. The level of suffering that these men go through is unmatched.